I am so excited to introduce you to the Spring 2023 Virtual Showcase speakers from the Big Talk Academy. Each one of these speakers went through the 12-week certification program, which culminated in the Virtual Showcase. I look forward to hearing what you think about their big talks. Enjoy. To take our stage today is Meena Srinivasan. Meena is a South Asian American entrepreneur committed to advancing a world built on belonging. She is a transformative leader, author, and speaker with deep expertise in the field of social and emotional learning, and is one of Mindful Magazine's 10 powerful women of the mindfulness movement. Everyone, please welcome to the stage Meena Srinivasan with Unlocking the Secret Powers of Tenderness.
When I was in my 20s, I spent 5 years living in my ancestral homeland of India. I wanted to deepen my spiritual practice. One fall, my adopted city of New Delhi was the site of numerous bomb blasts, fueled by tensions between Hindus and Muslims. In the course of 1 month, there were 5 deadly attacks. Every day, my nervous system was on high alert, and fear coursed through my body. It was against this backdrop that I heard a peace activist was coming to speak at the site of Gandhi's martyrdom on the anniversary of his birth. My intuition told me I just had to attend this talk, and that experience would change my life forever. The speaker was Thich Nhat Hanh, who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that evening, he introduced a term that is foundational to the beloved community Dr. King envisioned: interbeing. He held up a piece of paper just like this with nothing on it. And he said, if you look deeply, you would see there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without the cloud, there'd be no rain. Without the rain, there'd be no trees. And without the trees, there'd be no paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. The cloud is not there, the sheet of paper cannot be there either. And he went on to say that if you look deeply enough, you could even see the logger who cut down the tree and the logger's ancestors as well in that sheet of paper. Now, maybe it was the timing or the violence around me, whatever the reason, this was a watershed moment. My whole worldview shifted, and I had a felt sense of our embeddedness. And so I left that night with a challenge. How could I live my life in a way that honors the nature of interbeing? 4 years later, I was on retreat at a monastery, New Year's Eve, and this intention came to me. My deepest aspiration is to grow my heart as wide as the world, cultivate boundless love, and release all that is not love and generosity from my heart. And even now, as I read this, it's so clear that this was the moment when that big concept of interbeing had real meaning for my life. So if interbeing was the what, this aspiration was my how. But then my next aha was that if I were to breathe life into this aspiration and truly live it, then I had to move in the world with tenderness. For the past several years in my work as a leader in the fields of mindfulness and emotional intelligence, I've been paying attention to this idea of tenderness, and I've seen how it's often overlooked, even though it is foundational. There's a great yearning in our world to belong, to feel seen, to be loved. And this longing has led me to investigate the profound effects of offering tenderness to ourselves and others. So I invite you to come on a journey with me for the next few minutes as we explore the secret powers of tenderness. And probably the best way to do this is to start with an experience. So I invite you to place a hand on the heart and take a deep breath. Bring to mind something that softens you into feeling a sense of tenderness. It might be a child or a pet. Whatever it is, just touch in and really drop deep into what you're feeling and where you're feeling it. Thank you. I feel it in my heart. It is a soft, soothing quality. It really is quite powerful, which is why it's so interesting that there's very little research on tenderness. In fact, the little research there is just defines tenderness as an emotional response to vulnerability. So without vulnerability, there's no tenderness. But here's the next piece. Without tenderness, there's no compassion. Tenderness is a key ingredient for cultivating meaningful connection with ourselves and others. And this is what I know to be true about tenderness. Tenderness is embodied. In a world where most of us are living in our heads, tenderness resides in the heart. Experiencing tenderness in our bodies activates compassion and connection with ourselves and others. And tenderness is active. It is not sentimental. It acknowledges and relieves suffering through our actions, like deep listening, non-judgmental awareness, and wholehearted presence. And tenderness is intrinsic. It is innate to who we are. It is automatic and it cannot be willed. In fact, researchers have gone so far as to say that the human species would die out if it were not for the nurturing aspects of tenderness. And tenderness is reciprocal. There's a mutuality to it. It involves a relationship with oneself and another. And it's not just about reaching out, but allowing oneself to be reached, to be vulnerable. Now, I know I said that tenderness is automatic and it cannot be willed, but you can develop habits of mind and heart to bring tenderness to your interactions. And here are some phrases from Thich Nhat Hanh that I use when I need to call upon tenderness in the moment. Darling, I suffer. Please help. Darling, I know you are there for me. Now, I use these phrases almost daily with myself. And try calling yourself darling, see what that does for you. My husband and I also use these phrases regularly, and they've helped us move through some tense moments that are natural in any relationship. And here's where the habit comes in. We've trained ourselves to recognize when we're activated. And instead of saying or doing something we might regret, we take a breath and we meet the moment with tenderness. Darling, I suffer. Please help. You know, the world can feel like a hard place. And that night in Delhi, it was so clear to me that we need a culture of tenderness where we stop forgetting that we belong to each other. When we talk about circles of care or compassion, let us not forget that the spark at the center is tenderness. So I invite you to hold this question close to your heart. How can I live with greater tenderness towards myself and others? Thank you.
Meena, that was amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Let's start with your frame. Your frame is wonderful. I love the color. I love what you're wearing. The lighting looks really great. It's super simple, which serves this talk beautifully because there's nothing to distract us. We're completely focused on you and embodying tenderness the entire time. You have a very calm, velvety delivery at the very beginning when you talk about the violence. And for everybody watching, that is such an important thing to understand when you're talking about something that's very hard for us as the audience to hear. The choice of how to deliver the information is really important. So, Meena, you did a great job of really being as calm as possible while you talked about violence that was happening at the top of your talk. I love that you brought interbeing into this conversation, and now more than ever to be able to talk about this and Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. It is such an important, powerful time. And I also study his work, so I appreciated all of this. To be reminded how we are all connected by using that piece of paper and telling that story. Anyone can connect to that and can connect to you because of that moment. You spoke to one person the entire time. And I want you to acknowledge that, yes, you are potentially alone in your room right now doing a Zoom performance. However, the way you delivered this was so intimate. And that is something that is really powerful and a beautiful skill. You think about talking to the one person who needs to hear this, even though there's how many people right now in this presentation, there's 77 people watching you deliver this talk on tenderness. But the way you delivered it, it was like I was in a room alone with you, and that was beautiful. One thing I want to bring to your attention, after we did the tenderness exercise, you said thank you, and that might be mistaken for the end of your talk. Mm-hmm. What I would say or suggest is thank you for joining me, or thank you for, because I know that you want to be in gratitude for us actually doing what you've asked, but be very careful there so we don't mistake that as an ending. I also love that you brought the research in at the exact perfect time. And the reason for me it was the right time is because we had all just been we had all just softened because of that exercise. So we are all completely soft, and in our tenderness, you bring in the research, and what that does is it solidifies and locks this in as a truth for us. I love the darling habit. I think that's fantastic. The darling habit, along with the culture of tenderness, is spectacular. And one final note, you said, I invite you 3 times in this talk. Consider one other way of encouraging us to follow your lead. Amazing. I love this talk. You did such a beautiful job. I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the virtual showcase speakers of the 2023 spring cohort. I would love to hear what you think about each of their talks. And if you desire to speak on my big stage, head on over to thebigtalkacademy.com and register today. Remember, your voice matters. Big love. Mwah.